New regulations for intoxicating hemp with a bill that just passed the state legislature. Ahead on Face the State, hear why Governor Mike DeWine says he plans to sign the bill and why a cannabis advocate supports this legislation. Plus, what is the plan for the death penalty here in the state of Ohio? We ask the governor and look at two bills making their way through the State House now. Plus, the governor sits down with 10 TV for a wide-ranging one-on-one interview. Hear what he hopes to accomplish in his final year in office and what the governor says he's most proud of this year. Face the State starts right now. Thanks so much for joining us for Face the State. I'm Angela Ann. Doug is off today. It has been a busy week for state lawmakers as the holidays approach. This week, the Senate passed Senate Bill 56. This will change marijuana and hemp laws here in Ohio. Now, the bill will impose stricter limits on THC, criminalize the possession and use of cannabis from out of state, and restrict the number of people who could have their records expunged for prior marijuana possession offenses. We asked Governor Mike DeWine if he would sign this bill into law. Here's what he said.
Yes, I'm going to sign the bill. I mean, I've been concerned about this and asking the legislature to take action at least for 2 years. What we have is a situation where people have abused the law. They are selling this intoxicating hemp with a loophole in the law, and there's no regulation over it. So you can walk in, a 9-year-old kid can walk into a gas station and buy intoxicating hemp. There's just no regulation. They have gummy bears that are made out of this intoxicating hemp. And so we're seeing kids who are getting into it and using it. So we need some regulation. We kind of had the wild, wild west out there for a few years, and it brought about kids ingesting it. You know, the number of kids going to the emergency room went up dramatically. So it's finally time that we got control of this, and so I'm going to certainly sign the bill.
Well, joining us now to talk about this decision is Adrienne Robbins. She's from the Ohio Cannabis Coalition. Thank you so much for being here on Face the State. Such a big topic and a big talker for the state of Ohio.
I feel like we've been talking about it all year because we have, obviously, and a really big week for the industry and really for all Ohioans.
So we heard the governor saying that he's been talking about this really for 2 years now. You support this legislation because you say it does protect families, the coalition does. Can you explain how?
In general, over the past couple of years, we saw kind of this emergence of these intoxicating hemp products. But let's be very clear. These are intoxicating products that are unregulated, untested, sometimes lab-made, synthetically made, and again, with no regulations and no age gating. So we were seeing them marketed to children. That's a huge problem anytime you bring this up to people. And they were shocked to find out that they were legal. And they were legal in a gray area, which the federal government ultimately acted on. And now Ohio is really taking a leading approach by closing that timeline even more.
A lot of businesses that are involved in this business, they say this law will now put them out of business and It will hurt their families. So what's the best way then really to protect? Because their argument is, okay, if you want to regulate, why not just make it over 21?
So in general, again, we are talking about the safety of consumers, right? So whether you're an adult or a child, I think you should be able to trust the products that you're getting. When you go to a licensed dispensary, you know exactly what is in those products. You know how many milligrams of THC is in those products. You know that they have been tested. You know the state is regulating them. That's something I believe Ohio consumers deserve to have. And as far as businesses going under, honestly, I really doubt that gas stations are just going to cease to exist because they can't sell this one line of products. They've made a lot of money over the past couple of years operating in this legal gray area. They knew it was going to come to an end, and now it has.
Do you feel like so much of this conversation has been because there is a misunderstanding or misconception when people talk intoxicating hemp and they talk cannabis, they just mix the two together, but they are so different.
They're very different. And let's be clear, this all came from a loophole created by the federal government. The loophole has now been closed. Now, anything over that 0.3% of THC is cannabis, and it should be treated as such. Here in Ohio, we have decided to have adult use marijuana sales, and we do it in a safe way. We should not have those products out in gas stations. They should not be at smoke shops or whatnot, because again, Ohio consumers voted to have safe, regulated cannabis products, and now they do.
We talk about revenue. This bill also talks about bringing some of that revenue back to some of those municipalities. Can you explain how that will work?
This was a huge point for OCAN in general and all of our members to be able to give back to those communities that host our dispensaries. And yes, this bill is now releasing some of that funding. We honestly are thrilled. We can't wait till, people start to see the benefit of this industry really at the local level that way. I think it was one really great Christmas present.
How many dispensaries do we have now in the state of Ohio?
So it's always going up, but we have over 150 right now, and I think we're going to continue to see that number rise as consumers learn more and more about this industry, are intrigued by it, and learn that they can find those safe tested products, sometimes right down the street from them.
Yeah. How do we compare to other states? I'm just curious with that number. Sounds like a lot, but more is coming.
More is definitely coming.
Yeah.
And obviously we have Michigan up north, which is a much different market than what we have. But we're becoming more and more competitive every single day. And I think this industry is really just going to continue to rise over the next couple of years. We are all very excited to be doing business here in Ohio.
And real quick, Adrian, we heard the governor say he does plan to sign this bill, but you say you expect a few line item vetoes. Why is that?
We're working on a few issues that I think sometimes with legislation, you don't always know the impact they're going to have. This is a broad piece of legislation, as we discussed earlier, hundreds of pages. And so when you start looking through, there's some things that I think we would prefer don't ultimately go through, but we'll wait and see.
See what the governor does. All right, Adrian Robbins, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
There is another big issue for Governor DeWine. This relates to the death penalty. As he goes into his final year in office, there is still a moratorium on executions here in the state of Ohio. The last one was in 2018, and 10 TV's Station Nakin asked the governor about where he stands today on the death penalty.
Well, I'm going to be talking about that. I'm not going to talk about it today, but I'm going to come out with a statement, probably in January, about what I think about capital punishment.
Right now in Ohio, there are 112 people sitting on death row, and executions in Ohio have been unofficially paused since 2020. Ohio is caught in a bit of a tug of war as two bills on both sides of the death penalty issue are now working their way through the State House. 10 Investigates Rochelle Aline explains.
Where do you stand on the death penalty in Ohio, considering the experience you have had?
I am 100% opposed to the death penalty in all forms.
Capital punishment is a sensitive topic for Lamont Hunter Sr.
Yeah, I was wrongfully convicted and sentenced to death back in 2007.
He spent 16 years on death row after being convicted of killing his girlfriend's 3-year-old son. Hunter told 10 Investigates the boy fell down basement stairs. And according to court reporting, at the time of his first trial, a coroner testified that the toddler had actually been shaken to death. But in May of 2023, after that coroner was given new evidence, she changed her mind, and Hunter was granted a new trial.
I eventually did what I did, accepted a plea agreement and came home to my family and regained my freedom.
I just want to say that I'm happy to be able to get back to the business of living my life and with my children.
In the end, Hunter pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and child endangerment and was released on time served.
All the emotions you can think of.
His experience with death row is one not many will ever share, but his opinion on it is becoming more common in our state. A 2023 survey by the Terrence Group found that 56% of Ohioans would swap out the death penalty for life without parole. And in October, almost 30 former lawmakers who helped to reinstate the death penalty back in 1981 added their voices to that chorus through this open letter. They said the law isn't always applied fairly, and the money allocated for it could be better spent helping victims' families or preventing crime. State Senator Nikki Antonio has been working to repeal the death penalty since 2014. Her latest push is waiting to be heard in committee.
I think it's really important that we get this done, and so So no, we'll keep at it. I do believe we're probably closer than we've ever been.
But not everyone feels the same way. In its latest review of Ohio's capital crime law, the Attorney General's office called out the state for the unofficial moratorium it's had on capital punishment since 2020. It came after a federal judge questioned whether Ohio's lethal injection practices were humane. The AG's office said it will comply with the Trump administration's 2025 push to restore the death penalty nationwide. And that law review also highlighted House Bill 36, which would allow Ohio to also use nitrogen gas for executions. Attorney General Dave Yost testified in support of that bill to a House committee in October.
By failing to keep our promises to the family members of the slain, we dishonor them. Our failure to keep our promises to juries who sacrificed a piece of their lives to do their duty is also dishonorable.
10 Investigates also got a chance to sit down with one of the bill's sponsors, Representative Phil Plummer, and he told me he welcomes the debate surrounding this issue.
There's people 100% for it and there's 100% against it. But we, as a society, the rule of law, will sit down and figure it out. You know, I may lose that debate, and if I do, so be it.
Right now, his bill is awaiting another hearing in the House Judiciary Committee. In Columbus, Rochelle Aline, 10 TV News.
Rochelle, thank you. And as we near the end of 2025, Governor DeWine is looking at 2026 as his final year in public office. Earlier last week, 10 TV anchor Stacia Nukin sat down with the governor for a one-on-one interview. Here's a part of that conversation.
Governor, you are headed into your last full year as the leader of Ohio, the head of our state. And as far as I know, there's no campaign that you're planning to run after that time.
No.
And that's kind of new, having spent your life in public service. So how do you plan to maximize this last full year?
Well, maximize my last full year is what I intend to do. You know, there's a real sense of urgency. I'll tell you a little story. This is a countdown clock. You can see it there. You see how many days, 395 days, and how many hours, minutes, and even seconds are left until I leave office. It was actually given to me by Jeb Bush, former Governor Jeb Bush. And I think he gives them to all governors who are in their last term. So I have this on my desk.
How do you finish strong, as that says?
What are your priorities? I think it's you know, the things that we've laid out that we think are so very important. Kids have one chance to grow up, so we got to get it right with them. You know, we've done some things I think are very positive. We've taken cell phones out of the schools. The science of reading, we know is the best way to teach kids how to read, but yet in many of our classrooms that was not taking place. And so we have now mandated you have to use the best practice, which is the science of reading. Fran and I have now been, I think, in 40 some schools, 120, 30 different classrooms, seeing how the science of reading works. It's inspiring just to see these kids. They're so engaged, and we know it really changes their life. Our next big thing, we're involved in it right now. We'll have an announcement next week about it. But one of the things that the superintendents were telling us and the teachers were telling us and the principals were that some of the new graduates coming out of our teaching colleges were not being taught in regard to the science of reading. They were being taught by whole language or something else, something that now is very discredited. And so we got passed by the legislature, every school, teaching school, college in the state teaching teachers to be teachers has to now follow the science of reading. So we just completed an audit. We'll have this announcement next week or how they're doing. We're doing okay, we're improving, but we still have a ways to go. So focusing on those things that we've started that we know we really need to get done. We have another one I'll just mention. It's going to start in just a few days, right after the first of the year. And that is what we call this I program. And that is kids, what we know is that kids have to be screened and that when they're in elementary school and determined, do you need an eye exam? We also have found out, though, that 2/3 of those who are screened and it's determined they need an eye exam don't get the eye exam for whatever reason. And so we're targeting 15 counties to start, but we hope to take it statewide. Basically, bus will pull up, and kids will have the opportunity to get in there, actually be examined, take that eye exam, and then they'll come back in 3 weeks with the glasses. And it's going to make a fundamental difference in the number of children who can actually see today. And if we expect them to be able to read, if we expect them to be able to enjoy life and function, they need to be able to see. And that's going to be a major step forward. So it's things like that we're just going to continue to push, and we hope to get done.
The governor always with a focus on the kids. Still ahead on Face of the State, Governor DeWine says he also wants all synthetic kratom made illegal here in Ohio. But he also has concerns about natural kratom, and business owners say that's not fair. You'll hear from them coming up. Welcome back. Governor Mike DeWine is now urging the Ohio Board of Pharmacy to move immediately to ban all synthetic kratom products. This comes after DeWine initially sought a ban on both natural and synthetic kratom. 10 TV's Libby Cathy spoke with business owners who say they're worried about what comes next.
To be honest with you, I was super surprised.
Governor Mike DeWine once again calling on the Ohio Board of Pharmacy to immediately designate kratom as an illegal drug. This time, he's asking the board to ban synthetic kratom first, while he pursues a more traditional rulemaking process to ban natural kratom. In a statement Thursday, the governor said national experts agree synthetic kratom compounds should be scheduled as illegal. And while he still has deep concerns about natural kratom, he says a standard rule process will allow for hearings, testimony, and a more deliberate review. That move raising alarms for Ohio business owners who say they only sell kratom in its natural form.
He should have just put in there, hey, we're going to ban all the synthetics and we're going to leave powder alone.
I thought and I wish that the synthetic stuff had been banned a long time ago. It is hurting people. I just don't feel like there's any reason to ban natural kratom.
Kratom, a plant native to Southeast Asia, has grown in popularity across the U.S. Advocates say it's a safe supplement for pain and mental health, but state officials point to its growing connection to overdose deaths. DeWine cites preliminary data from the Ohio Department of Health showing kratom was a cause of death in more than 200 unintentional overdose cases between 2019 and 2024. But business owners tell us an outright ban of natural kratom, too, would hurt Ohioans.
It's not only going to put people out of business. I personally worry more about my customer.
What's going to happen? They're either going to go back on, their pharmaceutical drugs, but most likely they're all going to go back to the harder, drugs. It just keeps them clean.
With public comment potentially on the way, they say they're ready to weigh in.
We would absolutely step forward as long as the people that are at that hearing, are they actually willing to listen?
And I'll do whatever I can, I'll fight this all the way down.
Well, a move this week by Columbus City Council to help protect renters. City leaders say most people who live in apartment complexes here in Columbus are not paying their utility bills directly to the utility provider. Instead, the property owner or a third-party company buys that utility in bulk, then resells it to the tenants. Monday night, Columbus City Council members took steps to regulate this practice of reselling utilities, often known as submetering. 10 TV's Carla Rodner explains what this means for you.
Basically, you're not being treated as an equal.
David DeNegri started asking questions about submetering after realizing he was not paying his bills directly to the utility company, instead to a third-party billing agent.
I was a heart patient and I was eligible for energy assistance, and they just made it very difficult for me to get it.
In submetered housing, landlords pay one large utility bill, and a third-party company divides it up and bills tenants. That company isn't regulated by the state, meaning tenants don't get the same protections. Columbus City Council member Christopher White explained why he wants to regulate this practice.
It has consistently been reported that utility reselling has inflated residential utility bills for individuals in multifamily complexes, and additionally, most residents are often not aware that they're being resold a utility.
The code change says landlords and billing companies cannot charge tenants more than what the utility company would have charged them directly. It also puts caps on administrative and late fees. Dimitri Hatzifotinos, who represents landlords as the attorney for the Columbus Apartment Association, says it will be even more important for landlords to outline how utilities will be billed in a tenant's lease.
There is still the ability to charge different than what the landlord pays, because the landlord can buy in bulk and then charge separately, but they shouldn't be paying more than what they are already would have been paying, like at AEP or the City of Columbus.
City Council's original legislation introduced in April would have banned the practice of reselling utilities outright. But White says that could have led to rent increases. But this initial action is welcomed by residents like Denegri.
Well, I'm glad to see they're taking an initial step in doing this.
Right now, there's also a piece of bipartisan legislation that's been introduced in the House that would create similar submetering regulations across Ohio. That bill has been sent to House committee. Reporting in Columbus, Carla Rogner, 10 TV News.
Carla, thank you. Coming up, we dive deeper into our one-on-one interview with Governor Mike DeWine. Hear what he says were the peak and the pit of 2025. As Ohio Governor Mike DeWine looks ahead to his final year in office in 2026, we are taking a look back at 2025. Here is more of Station Akin's one-on-one interview with the governor.
In our family, we have something that we ask each other at the end of a trip or a weekend, and we say, well, what was the peak and the pit? So as we wrap up this year with you, how would you define the peak and the pit of your year?
Well, I think professionally, as governor, the highlight has been the things that we've been able to do for children, whether it is the new scholarship that we put in, where if you're in the top 5% of your graduating class, it's a $5,000 per year up to 4 years, so it's $20,000. And you get to choose, as long as you choose some college in the state of Ohio. And it's keeping more kids in Ohio. We started at the cohort of that group, the top 5%. Normally about 60% of them go on to college in Ohio. We raised that by this scholarship to 75% the first year, and we're into the 80s now with the second year and the third year. So a lot more kids staying in Ohio. That means that they're more likely to fall in love with somebody in Ohio or get a job in Ohio, and we want them to stay in the state of Ohio. So I think that's something that's very, very, very exciting to me. I don't know. Look, you don't get everything you want, so maybe some of the proposals I've made that haven't been enacted yet might be the pit, but I don't give up, and I'm not discouraged, and we have some things that I've asked the legislature to do, and I think they will eventually do. So.
Where does that countdown stand at this point in the interview?
Yeah, well, we're doing okay. We're doing okay. But look, I think there has to be a sense of urgency. I've had a sense of urgency since I took office. I know that my time as governor is limited. It's limited from the time I take office. We know that the clock is always running down. And so I look at that as an opportunity. This is our opportunity. I tell my members of the cabinet, our leaders in our office, this is our opportunity to make life better for Ohioans. And our ultimate goal is for every Ohioan to be able to live up to their full God-given potential. And we want to make progress on that every single day, and we're going to continue to do that.
You can watch Stacia's entire interview with Governor DeWine streaming on 10 TV Plus anytime. If you don't have 10 TV Plus, just download it to your smart TV and watch for free. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Angela Ann. We'll see you again next Sunday at 11:30.